welcome to the 11th episode of our Colorectal Live series from Johnson & Johnson Institute and Ethicon. This is where we get up and close and personal with some of colorectal surgery's most impactful and innovative individuals. I'm Richard Brady, consultant colorectal surgery at Newcastle Hospitals and your host tonight. Firstly, thanks to everyone who's been watching our series so far. You can catch up with our previous episodes on the hashtag ColorectalLIVE or indeed by visiting our dedicated website on jnjmedicaldevices.com, and the address is just below. Tonight's episode is all about Professor Julio Mayol. Professor Mayol is one of the world's most followed, impactful and innovative minds in colorectal surgery. Julio is the Professor of Surgery at the Universidad Complutense in Madrid and Clinical Director of the Hospital Clínico in San Carlos. He has a Twitter following of nearly 48.5 thousand individuals and has been behind some of the most innovative steps forward within surgery, including our move on social media. Julio appears fortnightly on Spanish television to update on the crisis that is emerging there, and has led his own hospital's response during the crisis in the last year. A celebrated author and researcher, Julio is the secretary of the BJS Society, online education and innovations director at the journal Surgery, and tonight Julio will be telling us all about his research and career in networking, social media and collaborations. So thank you very much for joining us tonight, Julio.
Thank you very much, Richard, for inviting me. It is an honor and a privilege to be here with you. And thanks also to Ethicon for giving me this opportunity.
Well, Julio, the honour is entirely ours, and thank you very much for coming to visit us tonight and to giving us your insights. Now, you can get engaged in the conversation too. Ask your questions to Julio by using the hashtag ColorectalLIVE and get engaged in our polls here on J&J Medical Devices UK Twitter channel. We'll come to those later in the interview. Now, Julio, let's get to know you a little bit better. You're a clinical director and professor of surgery. Tell us, how did you come to be a surgeon? Did you come from a medical background?
Well, no family history of medicine or surgery at all. I am like J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter. I am dirty blood. However, when I was 5, I decided that I wanted to be a surgeon and that I would do whatever is necessary to get there. And here I am, almost 53 years later. And this has been possible not only because of me, the support of my family, and also from many other individuals who have played key roles in this journey.
Well, that's a great Harry Potter reference, Julio, and if you're talking about being a muggle, you're amongst good company online tonight. So let's talk a little bit about your experience in Boston. I understood that you spent 3 years there. Tell me about your experience.
Well, the first time I went to Boston, I was a 4-year resident. And Julio Garcia Aguilar, a very famous colorectal surgeon, my predecessor at Hospital Clínico, and then even before at the Beth Israel, returned to Madrid after getting his fellowship at the Minnesota Cancer Center, and suggested that I should go to the Beth Israel. And I took a clinical rotation in 1994, and I met Jeff Matthews and Rich Hoden. These 3 people have been key for my evolution as a person first, and secondly as a surgeon, although only 2 of them are colorectal surgeons, because, as you know, Jeff Matthews is an HPV surgeon. And a highly connected individual, by the way. I learned that from him.
Well, that leads us on to the next question, Julio. I understand, obviously, we're talking tonight about networking, and it sounds like Boston impressed you in terms of its networking potential. Can you give us some insight into what you learned about networking in Boston and about the power and influence of networks?
That was a very interesting period of my life. Also, for the Beth Israel was the merger between Beth Israel and Deaconess was going on at that time. It was a difficult time for them. 2 different cultures coming together. But what I learned is that Harvard does not exist. It's a fantasy. It's about people. It's about buildings. It's about establishing connections to learn, to understand, and to disseminate knowledge. And that's what I learned. I also devoted a lot of time to cell culture. I cultivated T84 cells, intestinal epithelial cells. I learned to feed them, to keep them safe. And when I did that, they collaborated among them to show me how chloride transport occurs or how the barrier function works. And putting together these two observations about Harvard and about cell culture, I think that transformed the way I looked at reality.
Well, I think tomorrow when I go to work and regard my colleagues as part of the epithelial cell culture of the internal intestinal tract, it has some relevance to colorectal surgery. So a new and unique insight there. But clearly managing a network is obviously key to career progression and has been very important in your own career. I know that you are a clinical director now within the hospital in Madrid, and you've been leading essentially the fight and the resistance against COVID-19 in Madrid within your hospital. Can you tell me a little bit about what you've done during the time of the last year, and particularly how important networks have been to that cause?
Well, we are a social species. Whatever we do, the way we tackle complexity is through collaboration, through large scale and through collaboration. So what I did is I led the emergency committee, and I connected professionals, highly trained, very smart professionals. They got in touch. First, it was physical connection. Then we used platforms to keep, and I shared information with them because when they are extremely intelligent and brilliant in terms of professional development, you don't need them to do what you tell them. You must listen to them, understand, and then throw information and ideas in to make the system function. So basically, we create this internal social network to be able to respond to this huge crisis. In addition to that, we connected our Hospital Clínico San Carlos social network with many other networks working at the same time in Madrid and globally. And we collectively responded to this crisis. It was very hard for the first wave. We got better with the second and third, and now we are facing the fourth. It's not as dramatic as it was. We all have learned from this. But even at a global scale, social networks have been key to face this tremendous crisis.
Well, I think that's a great insight and shows again the power of networks in defeating a really difficult time for all of us. And moving back to your academic career, obviously you moved from the intestinal cell culture layer to move into technology and social media. Can you tell me, was there a particular time or a particular event that made that happen?
There's a good memory I have about that. Some of the fellows working at Jeff Matthews' lab got together on a yearly basis at DDW. So Madhu Prasad and I met in San Diego, I think it was 2008, and started discussing that surgical biology was not the future for academic surgeons, that academic surgery had to use technology to be able to transform knowledge into value, and that's what we did. He established the Innovation Institute at Henry Ford Hospital in Detroit, and I started my own innovation unit at Hospital Clínico San Carlos. And both of us pushed this envelope, although he decided to move away from it later on. But I stayed connected, and IT has been critical to pursue innovation at my own institution.
Now, Julio, we are talking tonight about excellence in networking, and hopefully soon we'll be able to deep dive a little bit further into your experience of networking. You've already given us some powerful examples of how networking is saving lives. But first, to our first Twitter poll of the evening, hosted on the J&J Medical Devices UK Twitter channel, and we're asking our audience this question: in relation to surgical networking with a new professional, I am A, comfortable and look for the opportunities; B, do it if I must or engage if needed; C, uncomfortable and avoid if possible; and D, other. And we'll come to the answers of those polls later on tonight in the interview as we get through our questions tonight. Now, Julio, let's start off with a little bit about the basics of a network. You're an expert networker. Can you tell me what is a functioning network and how is it important to surgery?
In order to get a functioning network, it has been studied, and we have some evidence. There must be trust among individuals. They must connect, but they must trust each other. Otherwise, it's impossible to make it function. Once people are connected, they start sharing ideas and thoughts and knowledge. And if you see a well-structured network, and there are tools to analyze it, if you see that it's well connected and that they collaborate and they have conversations, respectful conversations, then you can assume that this network is functioning correctly. And you can see that with colorectal surgery, somnifor surgery, and others. And you always must take into account that deception, anti-social deception, fragments the network. Fragmented networks are truly a representation of online deception and lies.
Well, really strong insights there, Julio. And in terms of the networks that you've been involved in, can you tell us why are they successful? How have they achieved impact? What's the secret there? And have you any success stories for us?
There are several communities that have been successful on Twitter, more specifically. somnifor surgery, the one that we launched in 2008, open source research led by La Alsuna from Denmark, or COVID Search, led from Birmingham. There are three clear examples of how meaning and trust can make communities, surgical communities, advance. And COVID Search is a clear example. It has been a fantastic collaboration, a massive collaboration, which has recruited surgeons from all over the world to get trustworthy data to generate real-world evidence for surgical decision-making. It has been, without Twitter, I don't think it would have worked that way. So there are clear examples of how people, when they find meaning and trust, they collaborate, people collaborate to make a difference.
With so many global networks available, and they are entirely transformative in the last few years in terms of our progress in communication, is there an easy way of detecting which are good and which are bad networks? What is it about those networks that you should look out for? And I know that you've spoken previously about the anatomy of networks with levers and hubs, etc. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it's all about the kind of conversations you see when you engage with other nodes, when you watch videos, or when you read tweets, is the kind of language, the words used, the atmosphere that is created around those conversations. So if you follow people you trust offline, and you follow people who are key opinion leaders offline, and you see how they behave, you can immediately notice whether what they are doing is relevant or not. And for surgical communities, it's absolutely relevant. And it's easy to see that Twitter for surgeons can be extremely useful. It becomes a smart partner.
Now, you've placed an emphasis on language, Julio, and some of our audience may not know that you're actually an accomplished author of fiction and been very successful in that field. Can you tell us, before we proceed a little bit more in depth about networks, in relation to the fiction works that you've been involved, tell us about your main character, Dr. Clinton, and some of the background about how you created him and where he came from being.
Dr. Clint is a fictional character. It's like something made up with features from different people I have met along the way. He's an HPV surgeon. He's not a colorectal surgeon. And he just provides some insights about how surgeons live and make decisions. And it's interesting that he's not a Spaniard. He's from Austria. So it's different. His temperament and his personality is different from one would expect from a Spaniard. But it's a good way to express feelings, ideas, and it's a good channel also to connect with people who are not connected with surgery firsthand, but they are interested in understanding how our brains work.
Now, getting back to our questions on networking, Julio, there is really, as surgery and social media matures, a kind of phenomenon of the echo chamber emerging, but also increasingly a polarization of views with a lack of that grey space between to discuss. Where are we with social media and surgery, and how do we stop people being offended?
Good. Very good point. Very good question, Richard. I think that echo chambers, fake news, polarization, and also social media fatigue are some of the barriers, limitations of the use of social media. Especially some surgeons are concerned about how to face this and how to solve it. The idea here is stay professional, be nice, don't tell things you won't tell your mother, and also try to avoid this echo chamber effect. More connections, more diversity, more dense interactions. Trust others, people who you already know offline, and last but not least, allow free flow of ideas. If you do that, you can avoid being kidnapped inside these echo chambers.
And I guess one of the other concerning aspects that is really progressing is the fact that we're seeing a deliberalization of opinion, Julio. We kind of are emerging as having a cancel culture within the discussions that we have online. People are afraid to express their opinion. How can you enhance freedom of expression online, and how do we protect the environment that everyone's worked so hard to create within these networks?
I think, and I recommend, the Socratic method for surgical trainees, surgeons, and all those within these surgical communities. Basically, it's about debating, about critical thinking, based on making and answering questions. We need to show others that everything can be said, everything can be questioned, and probably with Twitter polls it can be very easy, because you can make a statement without being very offensive to others, by asking questions with different options they can vote for. And I think I have used it on Twitter, and I think it's a very good way, because first, you must reflect on what you say, and others can provide you with a different opinion or a different insight that you didn't pay attention to. And then both of you, your audience and yourself, can improve while addressing any idea, thought, project, opinion, because if we just avoid discussing important, relevant issues, we will be poorer down the road.
Well, absolutely, and I think there is an issue of conflicting with the original principles of what we need to do in social media and that trans-global communication pathway that we have to spread ideas freely. Now, clearly, elements of this inhibition...
Diversity is not only about opinions, it's about race, it's about gender, it's about everything. Try to understand, listen to others and understand. That's the most important part of social media.
Very important lessons. Now, clearly these elements are somewhat inhibitory that we've been talking about, and I think that's relevant to our second poll of the evening. And then here's the question that we've been asking our audience on J&J Medical Devices UK Twitter feed. In relation to expressing my personal views as an individual surgeon online, I am comfortable and feel free to express anything, or I self-censor views due to fear of criticism, or I am uncomfortable expressing any views due to criticism or other. And we'll reveal the results of those a little later. Now, your experience of having nearly 50,000 Twitter followers is something that probably would keep me and many others awake at night. Can you tell us, has there been any bad experiences with having that large following, and how have you dealt with that in a healthy way?
Well, the most ugly part of this is not because of social media in and of itself, but because I have become a TV personality. Giving my opinion about COVID-19, explaining what it is and what measures should be taken in order to save lives, generates conflict always. It has been shown worldwide, in the United Kingdom, in the rest of Europe, and in Spain. So I have received death threats via Twitter, but because of my TV appearances, not because my activity on social media as a person or as a surgeon. So you need to learn about that. You need to be able to cope with this. And in fact, the person that did this was arrested. But one must consider that this is not about surgery. It's not about being there, connecting with patients or with people. It's about this social crisis we are going through, which is the COVID-19 pandemic. But remember, if we surgeons don't participate in the conversation, others will do it. So it's a professional obligation to be there, to speak with our patients, to educate them, to learn from them, because we have too many things to learn from them. We always think that we have to teach them, and we never think that we must learn. We must unlearn many things and learn from them if we want to improve shared decision making, if we want to respect agency and patients' experience.
I think you've just, in one series of stories, confirmed many of the fears of colleagues who get engaged in social media, but it's very insightful that these issues have occurred, and I'm glad that you have managed to manage them in a healthy way. So the big question is obviously, where are we going in the future with social media, particularly surgery? Are there particular platforms which are on the rise, or are there platforms on the fall that you can give us some insight into as to where we should invest our time and energy in networking?
As you know, Richard, it's always difficult. Yogi Berra said this, the baseballer. It's difficult to make predictions about, especially about the future. So whatever we say probably won't occur. But Instagram is there, and we need to be there, because sometimes it's very easy to convey the message with an image. It can be very powerful. TikTok, in 20 years, people won't have longer than 15 seconds to see if something is interesting or not. And we need to learn to convey messages on TikTok, or probably Clubhouse. Clubhouse is different, probably more conservative for senior people, and it can be very useful for surgeons. I think that is something to explore.
Julio, let's just ask you a little question about Clubhouse now that you've mentioned it. Tell us a little bit about the network. What is its use? And are you engaged in Clubhouse? How can we utilize our time on that networking site effectively?
Clubhouse is a very interesting radio-like network where you can have conversations, multilateral conversations, live with people you are connected with. Probably it's more appealing to more senior surgeons because they can, instead of podcast, use Clubhouse to interact with others. So I think that's a good way to probably journal clubs or probably grand rounds or kind of grand rounds with audio. The only problem is that we cannot share images, and we lose some benefits of conveying messages through images. But anyway, for more senior people, Clubhouse can be effective.
Julio, you've got a reputation as being present on many of the boards of international journals, and we asked this question to Debbie Keller, but I'd be interested in your view as to where are we going with the future of journals and publishing? And clearly social media is important. Is there any developments coming in the next year or two that we should be aware of as researchers?
There are things very interesting things that can be and that will be seen implemented in the near future. First of all, we are seeing, although sometimes we are not completely aware of, the merging between the social media paradigm and the old academic scientific publishing paradigm. Both are merging. Altmetrics, for example, alternative metrics is one of the outcomes of this merger, but we will see new databases to be exploited through advanced analytics, artificial intelligence, like natural language processing, machine learning, and deep learning. Probably we will use artificial intelligence to be able to find what we want, what we are looking for in this ocean of data, in this tremendous ocean of data and information and knowledge and science. And we will always need in the future to connect authors with research through graph analysis to validate research. Sometimes it's difficult to tell whether a piece of research is good enough. And probably advanced analytics, graph analysis could help us to make those decisions about the validity of surgical research.
Well, this has been a really important insight into the world of networking, Julio, and an incredible amount of work. So thank you very much for spending time talking to us about that. We come to that part of the interview which I'm absolutely sure you've been having sleepless nights about and been excited about for months, and that is our quick fire question round. So in this you have one sentence answers only, please. So cue the music. Now, Julio, who inspires you?
My patients.
That's a great answer. And what about your favorite saying or wisdom?
Healing starts with communication.
You'll have to remember that. And what's the worst piece of advice you've ever been given?
You shouldn't be a surgeon.
I'm glad you decided to ignore that piece of advice. And you're now obviously a well-celebrated author. What kind of books do you read and enjoy?
I love contemporary novel, and Bret Easton Ellis is my favorite writer. He is brilliant.
Julio, what would you like to be most known for at the end of your career?
I want to be remembered as a decent human being.
That's a humble aim and a very honourable one. Who would you most like to have dinner with?
The Queen Elizabeth II. What story?
Well, let's hope she's listening. And what question should we have asked?
Why don't you spend more time in the OR?
Well, I'm afraid we'll never get to know the answer to that. So thanks so much, Julio. It's been a fascinating interview. And as we're approaching the end of our chat, I wanted to review the results of our polls. Now, in relation to the first poll, in relation to surgical networking with a new professional, the results are A, comfortable and look for the opportunities in 52%, a majority. B, do it if I must, engage if needed, 33%, uncomfortable and avoid if possible, 9.7%, and D, other. So the majority of our compatriots feel comfortable about networking. What do you think about that?
Well, the United Kingdom is very engaged in social media, particularly surgeons. They have showed us how to use it. They have led the way. And I think that it's a little bit biased because we're asking people who, of course, enjoy social media.
Of course, I think that's clearly a clear insight there. Now, in relation to expressing personal views as an individual online, as a surgeon, our survey said, I'm comfortable and feel free to express anything, 17%. I self-censor views due to fear of criticism, 58%. I'm uncomfortable expressing any views due to criticism, 20.7%, and other, 3.4%. And that kind of falls in line with our discussion earlier, Julio. What do you think about that result?
I totally agree with you, Richard. This culture is not only about social media. Our societies are probably not as healthy as they should be. Well,
that's been a fantastic interview and a great way to end the interview, but it's a wide-ranging and inspiring body of work, Julio, and I'm really grateful for you to spend time with us tonight. But as a final treat, we have a growing tradition on Colorectal Live of trying to display our guests' non-surgical talents and skills, and you are well known for your love of photography, as anyone who follows your Instagram account can attest to. So can you tell us why you developed this interest and why is it important to you?
You know that I love writing, but have less and less time, and I walk around Madrid because Remy Gray recommends this to me. Brisk walking is good for health, and at the same time I can see my own city and I can enjoy it, and I can tell stories without words very quickly. And sometimes it's very beautiful to see these pictures. So that's why I enjoy taking these pictures and sharing them with others so they can create their own stories with these pictures.
Well, I can tell many of us enjoy living the world through your eyes, Julio, so thanks for that, and obviously keep up the great work. So on that note, thank you very much for your time tonight and for spending it with us on Colorectal Live.
Thank you.
Now, I'll be back again soon with Colorectal Live, and we'll be joined by Professor Charles Knowles on the 20th of May for a discussion on his specialist subject, Excellence by Design. So keep following us here on Twitter on the hashtag Colorectal Live, or you can catch up with our previous episodes again on jnjmedicaldevices.com, and the address is on your screen now. Thank you again to our audience for watching and to our fantastic guest, and thank you again for watching tonight's Colorectal Live.